Walk me through why, even when you have a big consensus, it doesn't necessarily mean that the crowd has to be wrong 12 months out, Dan.
Yeah, well, I think, hey, Jonathan, I think the main thing is to look at what people actually hold in their portfolios. So while you're hearing a lot of this talk about owning small caps and value and international, no one's really actually doing it. Just look at the flows. They're clearly still sitting in the winners of the past decade, whether it's large caps, whether it's tech, whether it's US. So, they're incrementally, maybe some of those dollars are moving outside the US or moving towards small US small caps and whatnot in international, but it's not, people really aren't putting their money where their mouth is. So we're saying put your money where your mouth is, own the stuff that's going to, drive that recovery next year. And that's what we've been doing in our portfolios.
Is Europe part of that story, Dan? Is the continent, the Eurozone, part of that story?
It is a bit of that story. I think it's pretty broad. I mean, the story is a lot about sort of avoiding some of the risks that are specific to the U.S. just as much as it's about owning, the improving areas of the world. But I think Europe is a part of that story. Europe, if you look at, we always focus on profits, liquidity, and sentiment. If you look at profits for Europe, clearly they're struggling and they're facing some of the immediate risks for COVID. But a lot of those COVID, statistics are actually not getting worse today, whereas in the U.S. they're still rising. You look at liquidity, there's still, both in the U.S. and Europe, there's still a tremendous amount of liquidity support with probably people should err on the side of assuming there's probably going to be more support. And then sentiment is probably the big swing factor, right? If you look at sentiment, you were just talking about potential signs of euphoria in the U.S. It's hard to argue that you're seeing anything like that anywhere else in the world besides the U.S., particularly as it pertains to Europe. So I think there's just more upside on that recovery story.